The spotlight found her before she was ready. One moment she was standing beside a marble pillar with a glass of water, invisible, exactly the way she'd spent 18 months learning to be. The next, a circle of warm white light dropped over her like a verdict, and 300 people in evening wear turned to look at a woman who had built her entire existence around making sure no one ever did. She hadn't agreed to this. But here's the detail that makes this story something other than a romance. The most dangerous thing Elara Voss ever did was not disappear. Plenty of people disappear. She had done it well. 18 months without a trace, a new name on a new contract, a new city that didn't know what her old one had cost her. The most dangerous thing she ever did was come back. Because standing in the shadow of a VIP balcony above that gilded ballroom, watching a woman he'd already dismissed once dismantle an entire room with her eyes closed, was a man who had spent 4 years constructing a world where nothing arrived uninvited. Her voice walked through every wall he had built, and what he did about it next, that is exactly where this story begins. Stay with me. Her name is Elara Voss, 27 years old. She has a voice that one reviewer once described as arriving in your chest before your brain has time to prepare. The kind of voice that fills arenas and gets you into rooms with people who smile warmly while calculating exactly what you're worth to them. She does not use it professionally anymore. Not since New York, not since Marco. What she uses now is the architecture of smallness, built with the precision of someone who understands that visibility is a vulnerability, plain clothes and muted tones, hair worn simply, a manner of moving through public space that doesn't announce itself. She has an apartment in Milan's Navigli district, exactly large enough. With 3 plants she tends with stubborn consistency, and a kitchen where she sings to herself in the early morning when the canal is still. That last part, the kitchen, the early morning, the voice she refuses to silence entirely, even while hiding it from everyone, is the detail that tells you everything about who Elara Voss actually is. She didn't come to Milan to die quietly. She came to survive. There is a difference. She works as a junior contracts analyst at Meridian Group, an international luxury investment firm with offices in 4 countries and a shareholder structure complicated enough that most of the staff couldn't tell you with certainty who actually owns it. She applied under her middle name. She listed no prior industry. She is, by every visible metric, unremarkable. This is entirely intentional, and it has worked perfectly, until 48 hours before the gala. The man, his name is Domenico Ricci, 41, dark suit, darker reputation. On paper, majority shareholder and silent chairman of Meridian Group, present approximately 4 times a year. His signature required considerably more often. In rooms where money and influence intersect, his name carries the specific gravity of something people don't say carelessly. Off paper, the part the firm's staff either doesn't know or has collectively decided not to discuss. Domenico Ricci runs the oldest and most disciplined criminal network in northern Italy, not the loud kind, not the kind built on spectacle, the quiet kind, 3 generations deep, built on the understanding that the most powerful position in any room is the one no one is monitoring. He has spent 4 years operating with the emotional range of a closed system, not gold. Exactly what contained, self-sufficient. He keeps people at precisely the distance required for efficiency. He has not, in recent memory, been caught off guard. Here is the detail that recontextualizes everything you just learned about him. Domenico Ricci attended the Meridian Anniversary Gala, not because protocol required it, but because his security team had flagged a threat against a senior associate who would be present. He was there to observe, to neutralize if necessary, to leave early. He was not there to feel anything. He was wrong about that. 48 hours before the gala. A boutique in the Brera district. Elara was working through a rack near the entrance when she stepped back without looking and walked directly into someone coming the other way. Her shoulder caught his chest. Solid. She stumbled half a step and turned, already apologizing before she'd finished turning. The automatic reflex of a woman trained by 18 months of making herself small and unthreatening. He looked down at her the way people look at minor inconveniences that have now required acknowledgement. Watch where you're going. Flat. No softening. No recognition that she had already apologized. Something stilled in her. She had spent 18 months becoming the kind of woman who absorbed things quietly, who let things pass, who decided that the price of reaction was higher than the price of silence. She had gotten very good at it. She looked at this man, the precise tailoring, the face built for intimidation, the absolute certainty in his posture that the fault in all collisions was someone else's, and the woman she had been before New York surfaced, briefly but completely. "I already apologized," she said. "You didn't have to make it worse." Something moved in his expression. Not anger. Recalibration. The specific shift of a man who has just encountered something his model didn't account for. He looked at her for one beat longer than she expected. Then he stepped around her and continued through the boutique without another word. Elara turned back to the rack. Her friend Maya materialized at her elbow immediately. Who was that? Nobody. She pulled a hanger forward. Forget it. He didn't forget it. But we'll come back to that. Friday evening. The ballroom of Grand Palazzo Meridian. Chandeliers. 300 guests. An orchestra threading soft music through the conversation. Elara stood beside a marble pillar in a dark silk dress Maya had found and forced onto her, glass of water in hand, cataloging exits. She recognized a few colleagues. She tracked Director Mancini across the room, red gown, ownership radiating off her posture, and did the practiced thing of making eye contact with no one. She had been doing this for 20 minutes, and she was fine. She was invisible. She was exactly where she intended to be. Then the MC stepped to the microphone, and the voice that carried across the ballroom was apologetic and polished in equal measure, the scheduled soprano delayed at the airport. A brief disruption. The room would forgive it. The room murmured. The specific restlessness of people who have dressed up for something and are now recalculating what the evening is worth. Maya said she was going to the restroom. She did not go to the restroom. What she did was find the MC, lean in, and say 4 words with the calm confidence of someone delivering a certainty, not a suggestion. She's the voice you need. Elara discovered this approximately 90 seconds later when the spotlight found her. And this is the part I need you to hold, because what happens on that stage doesn't just change Elara's evening. It changes something in a man on a balcony who believed, with significant supporting evidence, that nothing could reach him anymore. She almost lost it in the first 4 seconds. The microphone was in her hand. The room was vast and silent and waiting. Her throat did what it had been doing since New York closed. Tightened, told her there was still time to set the microphone down and walk. That stages could be taken from you. That the last time she stood in a spotlight like this, it cost her everything. She closed her eyes. She did not go to New York. She did not go to Milan. She went to a Sunday afternoon at 16 years old, singing in a kitchen because the feeling was too large to contain in silence, because there was no audience and no contract, and no one calculating her worth. Back when the voice was simply hers, before Marco, before the industry took it and handed it back to her repackaged as a product she no longer recognized. She opened her mouth. She sang. It started low. An Italian ballad she had learned alone in her Navigli apartment. It began small, and then, because it never stayed small, Because this was the thing about Elara Voss that no amount of carefully constructed invisibility could extinguish. It didn't. The room stopped moving. She felt it without seeing it. The particular stillness of people surprised by something beautiful before they've decided what to do about it. The grief of everything New York took. The strange relief of Milan's anonymity. The loneliness of being invisible so long she had almost forgotten the shape of herself. She let all of it come through the music the way she had at 16 in the kitchen, unguarded, unperformed, because she had forgotten to protect herself from feeling it. She sang like nobody was watching. That was exactly why everyone watched. Above the ballroom on the VIP balcony, Domenico Ricci had stopped moving. He had a car waiting. A call scheduled for 11. He had spent the previous 40 minutes in the detached observation mode of a man performing a security function at an event that did not interest him. And then he recognized her, the boutique, the collision, the woman who had looked at him without a trace of the deference he received in every room he walked into, who had pushed back at him with the flat certainty of someone who didn't know or care what his name meant, who had held eye contact until he was the one who looked away. He had filed that encounter somewhere categorized as irrelevant. He was not filing anything right now. She worked in his firm, which meant she had been there the entire time, inside his world, hidden, and now she was standing in a circle of light, eyes closed, and the room below him had gone liquid and still, and Domenico Ricci, a man who had built 4 years of impenetrable composure on the understanding that nothing arrived uninvited, was standing at a railing he did not remember walking to, watching her, and feeling something he did not have infrastructure to manage. He pressed it down. It came back. He did not look away. Now stay with me, because what Mancini does next is the moment this story stops being about a voice and starts being about survival. Monday morning, the floor reorganized itself around a woman who had spent 18 months being invisible. Men appeared near her desk. Lattes materialized, and a black-suited man from the executive floor delivered a message in 5 words that turned 12 heads simultaneously. Mr. Ricci wishes to see you. The elevator to the top floor had different air, quieter, cooler, the air of a place where people decided what work was rather than doing it. The office was almost entirely glass, 2 walls of it, the city arranged below like it existed for the specific purpose of being observed from here. The man behind the desk had not looked up. She recognized him in the same instant she recognized the room, the boutique, the flat look, the man she had pushed back at over a rack of evening wear, and then dismissed because she had a dress to find and a life to maintain. Her internal response was precise and brief. Oh, good. She smoothed her cardigan, reminded herself she had done nothing wrong, not at the boutique, not at the Gala, not at her desk this morning where she had simply been sitting and working. She greeted him with the careful, neutral politeness of someone navigating toward the least amount of trouble. He told her she was being reassigned without looking up from his document. Executive assistant reporting directly to him, effective immediately. He delivered it with the tone of a man reading a fait accompli. When she asked whether this was about the boutique, he looked up for the first time. "Don't flatter yourself," he said. "You aren't as important as you think." The sting was precise, placed exactly where it would land. She felt it go in. "I've reviewed your work over the last quarter," he continued, returning to his document. "You're capable of considerably more than your current position requires." This was about efficiency. She stood there with everything she wanted to say arranged in her head, specific, well-phrased, delivered with exactly the composure she had used in the boutique. She said none of it, because she thought about the cardigan and the low bun, and the 18 months she had spent, building a life nobody noticed or disrupted, and she thought about what it had cost her, and she made the decision with the part of herself that had become very good at swallowing things whole. "Of course," she said, and she walked out. 3 weeks in, Mancini made her move. She didn't do it clumsily. There was no confrontation, no visible malice. What happened was a document sent to a client with one clause removed, a single protection against a penalty, trigger in Section 9, and the version that arrived in that inbox was not the one Elara had written, checked, and uploaded. By the time the client's legal team flagged it, the contract was 20 minutes from walking. Elara fixed it, barely. 2 hours, multiple calls, an email rewritten 3 times. She sat afterward in the outer suite with the specific exhaustion of someone who has just run a race they weren't told they were entered in. She didn't know who had done it yet. But here is what she did know, sitting at that desk, going over the sequence with the quiet, methodical attention that had made her good at her job in every version of her life. Someone with access to the shared drive had gone in after her. Someone who knew what to remove. Someone who understood exactly which absence would do the most damage. This was not carelessness. This was craft. Hold on, because the second attempt is where this stops being sabotage and becomes something that could have ended both of them. A €1 billion partnership. 11 months of negotiation. A deal with Domenico's name behind it and the kind of weight that, if it collapsed, would not collapse quietly. The document was rerouted. A version uploaded under Elara's login credentials, containing language the other party would have found not just unacceptable, insulting. Deliberately, precisely, constructed to read as bad faith. Domenico caught it 40 minutes before the meeting. Elara was at her desk in the outer suite when she heard his voice through the office door, a tone she had not heard from him before. Not loud, the opposite of loud. The voice of a man who has found something and is deciding, with enormous control, what to do about it. She kept her eyes on her screen. The floor meeting was called at 2 p.m. Everyone present. No explanation until they were standing in the middle of it. Domenico stood at the front of the room in the particular stillness of a man who didn't need volume to fill space. He looked at the assembled staff with the measured patience of someone who had already made the decision and was now completing the sequence. Mancini was in the 3rd row. Director Mancini. The room went completely still. Your access has been revoked. Security will escort you out. Your contract is terminated, effective immediately. No elaboration. No invitation for response. The flat, final delivery of something already decided. Mancini's composure held for 4 seconds. Then something moved through her face. Shock first, then fury. She opened her mouth. Domenico had already turned away. She left. The meeting dissolved. And Elara sat at her desk and looked at her screen and felt something move through her chest that was not relief and not gratitude and not anything she had a clean word for. She stood up, walked to his office door, knocked twice, opened it. Why? He was at the window looking at the city. Why what? Both times, the Seoul Pacific contract, then today. Both times something went wrong with my name on it. Both times you stepped in. She held her ground. The first one was small enough that someone at your level would have let it pass. So I am asking you again? Why? He turned. She had seen recalibration on his face before, that adjustment when she refused to give him the easier version of a conversation. She saw it now, but underneath it was something else. Something she had not seen on him before. The silence lasted long enough to mean something. Because I tried leaving you alone, he said. Not a confession, not quite. More like the voice of a man reporting a failure in his own systems, accurately and without ornamentation. I tried being in the same room as you and feeling nothing. I don't do well at things I can't do. His jaw tightened. You called me out in a boutique like I was nobody. You looked at me like my name meant nothing. And I haven't, he stopped. He looked at her. The distance between them was not large enough. I haven't been thinking clearly since. The room was very quiet. The words were in the air. Both of them knew it. Neither of them moved. Alara's hands at her sides were not entirely steady. She did not let him see it. She walked out without giving him anything else. She sat at her desk and looked at her hands and thought, this is the exact thing I came to Milan to make impossible. She had been meticulous. She had been disciplined. She had chosen the smallest possible life, the beige, the plain clothes, the invisible routine, because the last time someone in a position of power decided she was interesting, it cost her everything. Her career, her city, her sense of what was safe. And now she was 10 feet from a man who had just told her, in language stripped of every protection, exactly how she made him feel. She did not know what to do with that. She knew only that it scared her, and that being scared of it did not make her want it less, and that the two things existing simultaneously in her chest felt unbearable, and underneath the unbearable, almost like being alive again. The eviction notice arrived on a Thursday night. Under her door at 11 p.m. formal letterhead. A deadline of 7 a.m. one page. She sat on her kitchen floor and read it 3 times. She looked at her apartment, the plants, the books, the one candle, the small and deliberate and carefully assembled evidence of a life rebuilt from the ground up with both hands. She already knew who was behind it. She didn't need to think hard about it. She packed through the night. 7 a.m. found her on the pavement with 2 suitcases and the specific depletion of someone who has run out of the anger that keeps you warm. Then she heard the cars, 3 black vehicles, arriving with the unhurried certainty of people who already knew exactly where they were going. The middle door opened. Domenico stepped out. Dark coat, that face. He looked at her standing on the pavement and said nothing. But something behind his expression moved quickly and was immediately controlled, and she caught it. A man who prided himself on feeling nothing about anything, looking at her with 2 suitcases at 7 in the morning, and not quite managing the nothing. He crossed the pavement and held out a folder without explaining it. She opened it. Read the first page. Looked up. You bought the building. She closed the folder. She looked at this man who had walked into her invisible life like a door she hadn't known was there, and had been refusing to close ever since. And everything she had been holding together through the night came up at once. Not dramatically, not loudly, but with the low, unstoppable pressure of something that had been building for weeks. What are you doing? Not loud, the opposite. You reassigned me without asking. You fired your director in front of the entire company. You said something to me in that office that I haven't been able to put down. And now you're standing on my pavement at 7 in the morning, holding a property deed. She pressed the folder against his chest. He took it. I came here for a quiet life. I do not want this. I don't want any of this. Why can't you just... She stopped. Rest. His voice, when it came, was quieter than anything she'd heard from him. Because I tried. 2 words. No architecture around them. I tried, he said again. I tried the distance. I tried the efficiency. I tried standing in the same room as you and treating you like every other person in that building. A pause, the pause of a man measuring something. I'm very good at maintaining distances. I have spent 4 years being good at it. He took 1 step forward. And then you looked at me like I was nobody. And I realized I was standing there, hoping you'd look again. The pavement was quiet between them. Alara looked at her suitcases. At the door she had come out of with nothing left. At this man who had more power than anyone she had ever stood in front of, and who was currently standing on a public pavement in the early morning, telling her the truth without being asked for it even once. She thought about what truth had cost her the last time she trusted it. She thought about what silence had cost her since. I need to think, she said. He nodded, like that was a reasonable answer which she hadn't expected. "The building is yours regardless," he said. "I'm not keeping a building. That's your choice." They stood there for another moment in the early morning, Milan going about its business with total indifference around them. Then she picked up her suitcases and went back inside. She thought for 2 days. She called Maya on the second day, which was a mistake, because Maya said, "Alara, your employer bought your entire building," in a voice that required the phone to be held at arm's length, and then said more quietly, "But how do you feel when he's in the room?" Alara sat with that question for a long time. The answer, when she finally allowed herself to look at it squarely, was this: he infuriated her. He communicated like a man who had learned language as a tactical instrument rather than a bridge. He had a gift for precision cruelty when he felt exposed, but he had also stood on a pavement at 7 in the morning and told her the truth, voluntarily, without being pressed twice. She had come to Milan specifically to find a life where things were true. She went to his office on the 3rd day. "I have conditions," she said. He looked up. "I'm listening." She told him she was returning to music, her terms, her space, non-negotiable. She told him the assistant arrangement was finished, and she told him that whatever existed between them moved at her pace, on her timeline, and he did not push. He looked at her for a long moment. "Agreed," he said, simply, immediately. "You thought I'd argue?" "Honestly, yes." Something moved at the corner of his mouth, the closest thing to a smile she had ever seen on him. "I told you, I don't do well at things I can't do. Losing you is on that list." She looked at him. "Okay," she said quietly. The venue opened 8 months later. Small stage. Warm spotlight that felt like being held rather than exposed. Jewel tones on the walls. Intimate enough to be honest. She named it Sanctuary, and she walked onto the stage on opening night with the old tightness in her throat. The New York reflex, the memory of what stages had once cost her. She pressed her hand flat against the wall for a moment. Then she walked out. A year later, on a Tuesday in October, Alara finished the final song of the evening to a room that had gone completely still. She stood at the microphone after the last note dissolved, eyes open, not hiding from any of it. Then she looked at the corner table, the one with the small reserved card that was there every single night without exception. Domenico had his glass raised slightly when her eyes found his, not performing it, just there, the same way he was always there, quietly, consistently having decided something, and then simply continuing to decide it. She smiled, the real kind, the kind that started somewhere behind her sternum. She was not invisible anymore. She was not performing either. She was exactly herself, standing on a stage in a room she had built, in a city that gave her back what New York tried to take, with a man in the corner who had chosen her in the particular way of someone who doesn't make choices carelessly, and never once looked back. Being seen did not feel like danger. It felt like something she might, finally, be able to keep. But here is what Alara still doesn't know. The night in that boutique was not an accident. Domenico had a file on her before she ever collided with him in that rack of evening wear. Her real name, her New York history, the name Marco, and a connection between her past and Domenico's world that will make everything you just watched look completely different. The next chapter opens that file. Don't be late. If this story found you at exactly the right moment, you already know why you stayed. Follow now, not for the channel, for Alara, because her story isn't finished, and what comes next reframes the beginning entirely. Drop a comment. Was Domenico's honesty on that pavement enough? Or does a man who runs what he runs have to earn trust in an entirely different way first? I want to see where you land on that. The conversation is going to be worth having. And share this with someone who needed to hear today that the life you ran from might not have been the problem. Sometimes all it takes is a different city, one dark silk dress, and a person stubborn enough to show up on your pavement and tell you the truth at 7 in the morning. I will see you in the next one.